this is kind of a roll call. Oh, and we're being recorded. Who else do we have here? Mary from Yakima, United Methodist. Wonderful. Welcome, everybody. Welcome.
And then Nathan from United Churches of Olympia.
Good to see you, Eleanor. So glad you're here.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Anyone else like to unmute and share where they're coming from? I'm from 32nd District, saying hello to you from Quest Church and in the Shoreline area.
Yes, I'm Michael Olson, Olympia Zen Center. I'm in District 2.
Wonderful. So glad you're with us, Michael Lynn.
Thank you.
I'm Martha Nichols from Newport, Washington. And my husband and I belong to the Inland Northwest Unitarian Universalist community. And we are in District number 7.
Yay, District number 7. Wonderful. Good to have you here with us. Maybe 2 more people to invite as we're also just letting folks roll in, but I love seeing your faces and hearing your voices. So anyone else want to roll call with us? Share your name, where you're from, your faith community. Maybe 2 more folks. Or in the chat. We can also do that. Okay. Well, why don't we do this? Fan staff, can you share what district you're coming from and where you're coming in? I think Blake and Jess are with us today.
I could jump in. Jess Ingman, East Wenatchee, and because of the redistricting, I'm now in the 7th Ledge District with Martha. So that was an exciting connection. Glad to be here tonight.
Thanks, Jess.
I'm
Blake, where are you
Karen
coming from?
PC. I'm in Bothell in the 1st Legislative District.
Good to see you, Karen. We're so glad you're with us again.
And
Blake, go ahead.
Yes, I'm in the 32nd District by about 1 minute. And glad to be a part of so many good folks on this call. And in the Edmonds, Mount Lake Terrace area.
Wonderful.
Well, I'm Kristen, coming from Tacoma in the 27th Legislative District, where the Speaker of the House resides.
Thank you, Kristen. Looking wonderful today. So glad you're with us as well. And you're going to share some really great celebration things with us. Before we do that, I do want to share some pictures. We didn't quite get the slideshow that I was hoping for, but we do have some pictures from our advocacy day and from some of our legislative districts. So Blake, could you maybe play the music while I share the slideshow deck?
We can try. I don't know if they'll let us share at the same time, but
all right.
I'll give it a go.
Let's see. It's very short. There's just a few pictures, but I wanted to at least share. Can you see that? Is that showing?
That's better. That was clear.
That's showing. Let me try playing music and see if it works.
Okay. Just to jog our memories from all the way back to February.
You hear that?
No. That's okay. We can do it without the music. I'm just going to click through. But we have Bishop Manlove here also from the Intermountain Synod of ELCA.
32. Whoop, whoop.
Yeah. Those are different LDs representing. "12 in the house."
Yeah.
And a great, beautiful group shot of all of us at the Capitol. This is our dignified picture.
and so many new folks with it this year. So if it's your first time coming in, you're here tonight, thanks so much for being here.
Yes, thank you. Okay, let me kind of get back on track. Where are we at here? Sorry. I've got layers of screens open and I lost myself here somewhere. Blake, do you know where we're at? Sorry.
Yes, in the program.
Yes.
So I think
Oh,
we're
I'm
ready.
introducing Kristen. Yes, sorry.
Yes, perfect. All good.
Okay, thank you. I'm so
Yeah.
sorry again, like these technical difficulties today. Well, it is my pleasure and honor to get to introduce our Policy Engagement Director, Kristen Ong, who has just done an amazing work working with our representatives and working with our faith communities. But Kristen is here to share with us all the different legislative wins that we all get to celebrate together because of the work that we got to do with each other. So I'm going to hand this over to Kristen.
Well, thanks, Joyce. Good evening, everyone. I'm Kristen Ang, Policy Director for Faith Action Network. And maybe next year we'll have bloopers and behind the scenes pictures and music videos for our celebration with IFED. So please join us next year because it'll be a lot of fun. It's such a joy to be with you tonight as we celebrate the 2026 Washington State Legislative Session, and more importantly, celebrate all of you for being such a great part of FAN and our network and always advocating. I always tell people our FAN network, each of them are already experts. They already know how to lead. They know the legislature. I know we have these toolkits and they're made for everybody to be inclusive, but I can tell you, each and every one of you could probably lead our sections. So I'm so glad to advocate with all of you because I know this is a lifelong work. Let me share. Here we go. I hope everybody can see the screen. And so I believe this is still the appropriate picture that we would put on Facebook, and not the funny faces one, but we'll maybe put that for next year. So this was us on IFED on February 12th. So it's good to see all the golden scarves, and people were asking me for days, and I was about the scarves, who were there, knocking on people's doors. So people were quite impressed with all of you that day. And that was also, let's see here. There we go. Well, let's start this off. What happened in the legislative session? It was a 60-day short session that began on January 12th, and it was shadowed by a $2 to $2.3 billion budget shortfall and some political shifts and real uncertainty about what would be possible in a short session that also just had the, I don't like to call it the big beautiful bill because I call it brutal and ugly, HR 1, the impacts of HR 1, as well as we had just come out of a $16 billion shortfall, try to repair that in the regular session or the long session in 2025. And this is only supposed to be a short supplemental budget year. What could really be done in 60 days? And it turns out a lot. We were told that this would be a year of limits, a year of simply cuts, a year where we simply had to accept less. But together we refused that narrative and we showed up grounded in our shared values of equity, dignity, and care for our most vulnerable. So your community voices really made a difference. And I do say necessity is the mother of invention, that when push comes to shove, our values showed up and we showed out. So this was quite a historic year. These are some of our guiding values and sections for what we advocated for in 2026: economic justice, defending and advancing immigrant and refugee rights, fostering rights, belonging, democracy, and pluralism, and cultivating climate and ecological justice. As you can see here, we're always advocating every year for a moral budget. I know that it seems like at the half of the year, that's where we really focus on it. But I say it's every second, every week, we are advocating for a much moral budget because we don't believe that these are just numbers. They have real impacts. And this is when people of faith and conscience have to come together and make a stand. And as Rep. Sean Scott once said, if there can be a moral budget, there can be an immoral budget. And we also featured our revenue queen here, Senator Noel Frame, which she has, I believe that's her famous necklace about tax justice. And there's Blake and Elizabeth. Make Washington work for working families, and tax justice is racial justice. So let's move on. And we know that we don't do this work alone. Like our network with all of you, all of our faith communities, people of conscience, that's a lot. And even then, we have a lot of coalitions and partnerships and organizations that we work with, including our faith and labor advocates here, like WFSE, the Washington Federation of State Employees, that have been really strong throughout these last couple of years, really making it known about not cutting for essential services or to the workers. And very essential this year, we've worked with your faith leaders, labor partners, advocates across the state, community organizations, and we know that the power of fan and advocacy is truly relational and values driven and people powered. And this session proved that when we act together, we can move systems even in the hardest times. And this is the result. Senate Bill 6346, the millionaire's tax, a historic step towards tax justice. Now, this particular bill took nearly 25 hours on the House floor. This was historic. It was the longest debate ever of the House floor. It established a 9.9% tax on individual income above $1 million, beginning in calendar year 2028, which would affect about 20,000 individuals. It raises major new revenue of over $3 billion, 3.4, depending on where you're going with that, how it lands, but it's about $3 billion starting in 2029 to support K through 12 education, healthcare, and other essential services, and increases small business B&O tax relief. So for small businesses, there is definitely a win. It's also exempting diapers, over-the-counters, and hygiene products from sales tax, and helps moves us away from being one of the most nation's regressive tax, and expands the working families tax credit, which is like a cash rebate for low and moderate income families. You can receive up to $1,200 per year. So that's cash that goes back to Washington residents that really need it, and expands it to 1.3 million more people. That's 18 and above, and 60, I think 65 and above now will get it. So this is supports that youth, seniors, and families really need. And this is the foundation for free school meals. So this bill, the governor has really put free school meals on the top of his list. So this bill allows to have free school meals in 2029, and there will be a bill in 2027 to be that vehicle. But that's set, because it's always about where are we going to find the money for this? And now we have found it in Senate Bill 6346, which builds off the working families tax credit and the capital gains tax, and addressing our regressive tax system. This is a once in a generation shift, and its time has come. A lot of people had said that, well, Washington doesn't believe in an income tax. Maybe 10 years ago, 20 years ago, maybe people thought nobody should get it. But we are living in what people might say is a K-shaped economy, in which those with the most are doing better and better, and those with the least, low to moderate income families, are doing worse. In fact, people often point to the stock market as ways people are doing better, but only the top 10% of Americans actually own about 90% of the wealth of the stock market. And we are actually living through, I guess, in recent decades, maybe for all time, for all I know, but even the Wall Street Journal and other things know that we have the most income inequality in America today, and that will only get worse in here. And this addresses that. We do need money to fund our social infrastructure, and this bill did pass. So thank you so much. It passed in the House, I think, by 51 to 46. And it will be challenged in the courts. It'll likely be challenged in the ballot box. So we have to let our community know what exactly is the benefit for our communities by having a tax on those who make above $1 million, on the few who are doing pretty well, and for the benefit for all of our community. And then I did also want to talk about some of the other budget wins. You know, a moral budget in a difficult year, because there are cuts. Don't get me wrong. You know, I don't want to seem like it's all rainbows. There were cuts to agencies. There were delays in childcare expansion in some programs, also to Running Start. You know, fewer credits to start with our paid, etc. College credits. So we're facing a multi-billion-dollar shortfall, and there were threats to the safety net. Fortunately, uh, you know, there were no cuts to TANF, temporary assistance to needy families, and workforce, which is critical for families in poverty. There is funding for SNAP administration and work requirements tracking hub to help people comply with the federal government. Cascade Care savings were maintained, and there was also a bill to end the garnishing of SSI benefits from foster youth. Also, there was the use of about $750 to over $800 million of the rainy day fund and one-time funding strategies, meaning some things were moved around in the state legislature if there was any unused funds in different places to fill in some of the gaps. Some of the major wins we also had was in the Housing Trust Fund, $197 million more in the Housing Trust Fund. The governor's also said that he would make housing a cabinet. There's $800 million more in total affordable housing investment. There was evictions and prevention legal support, $3 million for right to counsel. Also, for immigrant and refugee support, $25 million for the Office of Refugee and Immigrant Assistance, as well as the Washington Migrant and Asylum Seeker Support Project. And also, this was a really important priority, was the Apple Health expansion healthcare was protected for our undocumented immigrants. And there were 5,000 new enrollees that can be covered. And this was a heck of a fight, because in the beginning, they thought it would even be wiped out. So this was the fight. And we won. Y'all won. So thank you for your advocacy. This is from 2025, some of our key budget wins that you don't just win one year. So this is on top of that, you know, $93 million for the food banks. There was also to maintain Apple Health coverage. So every year we fight to maintain and advance, every year. And we can finally say with this one, the 17 million for more free school meals. In 2027, we can finally achieve free school meals, and in 2029, it'll be implemented. And here is, we also work with the Anti-Hunger Nutrition Coalition, as well as Northwest Harvest, and this was the top priority, House Bill 2238, which is statewide food security strategy. And it directs the Washington State Department of Agriculture to develop a comprehensive statewide food security strategy that establishes coordination across agencies, tribes, nonprofits, community partners, agricultural, big ag, to address hunger. So it tracks key indicators about food access, agricultural viability, and supply chain resilience. I think in times when there is need, or that we have to do better, we do have to strategize, come together to see what we can do. And this bill does that, to strengthen our coordination and address some of the root causes of hunger in our state, while also supporting local agriculture. So if there are some agricultural producers here, they would, you know, get first access to the school market. Okay, now down to housing. And also, I guess, a picture of me celebrating some of our wins at the governor's signing. So that's one of the great things I get to do. I attend some of these signings. And here's one of our housing champions, Representative Osman Salahuddin, who was actually last year's IFAD speaker. And we're here for the signing of House Bill 1859, which was a fan priority this year, which is affordable housing on religious properties. You know, our Spokane organizer, Brianna Diltz, or Bree, as you guys know her from Spokane, was the lead organizer for this. You know, did a lot of coalition for some stakeholders, from housing developers to faith communities all across our state. A lot of you testified on this. A lot of reverends, pastors, faith communities here in Tacoma, I know Central Washington and Spokane. as well as in Redmond, city council members all testified it was quite a very bipartisan bill. In fact, there was only one nay in each chamber, in the Senate and the House. It was highly supported. This expands affordable housing on land owned by faith communities, increasing the density bonuses, 50% affordable. That has to be at least 50% affordable for low income or 20% affordable for very low income households. So this basically unlocks utilized land like faith community properties and parking lots for housing. And it supports faith communities answering the call to serve our neighbors, as well as being part of the solution to what people say is the number one issue in Washington State, is housing. So thank you so much. This is definitely a bill that showed our legislature of what faith communities can do, and all the ways that all of you and faith communities have been working some of the challenges on the ground, like grassroots level, whether that's food security or hunger and housing. The next one is House Bill 2266, which is STEP housing, encouraging permanent supportive housing, transitional housing, indoor emergency housing, and indoor emergency shelters. I call it STEPs because it's shelters, transitional housing, emergency housing, and permanent supportive housing. That's kind of the nickname that people give to that. And this prevents local governments from blocking or delaying housing and shelters. So basically, if you have a zone for housing and hotels, that means that indoor emergency housing and indoor emergency shelters should be allowed. For permanent supportive housing and traditional housing, I should say. And if you allow hotels, you should allow indoor emergency housing and indoor emergency shelters. There are a couple of exceptions. If you already have major designated areas that are close to transition that you've put STEP housing in, then you could be exempted. And then also, what you can do as a city is think about the intensity, the occupancy for public safety reasons. That's where your local governments can put some restrictions. But if you allow residential housing and hotel housing, then you should be able to allow these particular permanent supportive, transitional, and emergency shelters. And this expands access to housing for people experiencing homelessness, and ensures that every community shares the responsibility in solving the crisis instead of pushing it to another town, to another city, to another place. So this was a big win for the Washington Low Income Housing Alliance and all its coalition partners like ourselves. So thank you. And I just wanted to put that most of the housing priorities that we put in the legislative preview were one maybe that we would work on next year is House Bill 2489, Shelters Not Penalties, basically stop criminalizing homelessness. So that's something that we can work on for next year. And hold on here. Okay. So I want to talk about Senate Bill 5974 first, Law Enforcement Leader Standards, which was probably our second most controversial bill. This one was the modernizing and strengthening the laws governing sheriffs and police chiefs and town marshals and other law enforcement leaders, creating consistent qualification, certification, and accountability standards for them, and also ways that if they're not certified or they get decertified, that your county council or county executive would appoint. This also places the limits on the use of volunteers and youth cadets, and especially commissioned by these law enforcement leaders, specifically that they're not supposed to be used for use of force unless properly trained, and definitely not used for civil immigration enforcement. Other states also have these kind of laws like Georgia, Texas, Massachusetts, Oregon. Now, I know this was made a big deal. This was 8 hours of floor debate, and there are still people who are trying to get the governor to veto, but really is just saying that there should be standards and accountability to our law enforcement leaders. In fact, the same type of responsibilities, if not more, should be put on them as their subordinates, who also have to comply to these standards. So as you know, there's also that real issues and challenges of a couple sheriffs making statements that they don't have to follow state law, that they don't have to, if they wanted to wear masks, they could, or comply with ICE, which goes against the law. So that would be violating the law. So this was a big deal, and we have sent into a letter urging the governor to sign. Now, a big part of this year is advancing immigrant and refugee rights together and protecting it. We work with Washington Immigrant Solidarity Network. This is some of our other partners here: Wenatchee for Immigrant Justice, Jewish Coalition for Immigrant Justice, Northwest, and One America. And some of the things are House Bill 2105, the Immigrant Worker Protection Act, which requires employers to notify workers within 72 hours when federal officials request I-9 records. Again, within 72 hours when inspection results are received. This is so that there's no disruption with these workers. It also clarifies that employers do not have to allow federal immigration agents into non-public work areas or release certain records without proper legal process. This helps reduce fear, protect due process, and keep immigrant workers and families informed. This is one of the bills for our immigrants and refugee communities. The other bill that I wanted to talk about, which is back here, Senate Bill 6002, was also driver privacy protections, ALPR regulations, which stands for automatic license plate readers. This bill, Senate Bill 6002, creates Washington's first statewide rules for ALPR systems and the data they collect. It limits ALPR use, sets data retention rules, and restricts data sharing and access. It prohibits their use for immigration enforcement and around sensitive places such as schools, places of worship, courts, food banks, and protected healthcare facilities. This is necessary because some people have already used it to go after people who access reproductive care. And we can see it being, and Yakima has also told us there's fear that it's also being used for civil immigration. So this also requires registration with the Attorney General's office when you have such a system. And there's policies, training, audits, and annual reporting, and stronger accountability for agencies using ALPR systems. That's automatic license plate readers. And this is about protecting privacy and civil liberties while still allowing limited regulated uses for ALPR, because we want to know how to find someone who is missing, or, for car thefts, etc. So this is the balance. And this was almost bipartisan, because there is also on the Republican side who does value privacy. Another bill that has to deal with ICE was Senate Bill 5855, restrictions on masking by law enforcement officers. This prohibits local, state, and federal law enforcement officers from wearing face-concealing masks while interacting with the public, with limited exceptions. The one in California was actually ruled unconstitutional because they only talked about the federal law enforcement. I think the Ninth Circuit had said if they had covered everyone, including local, state, it might have been constitutional. But this particular one actually prohibits all. So there is no discriminatory effect on that part. So this may actually withstand a challenge, which I think it would be challenge. Let's see here. On the environmental justice front, House Bill 1903, statewide low-income energy assistance program, did pass. And so we're very happy about that. This is also about economic justice. This provides a monthly bill assistance, not just one-time relief, and prioritizes households with the greatest energy needs. Oh, what happened there? So this is all about helping families keep the lights on and stay housed, and reducing energy burdens to more affordable levels. We hope that, I think this is still going through the governor's desk, and there is no immigration status barriers to eligibility. The next one on here is Senate Bill 5982, which is about utilities, clean energy, and data centers. This bill ensures utilities plan smarter and more transparently for Washington's clean energy future, especially as data centers and other large energy users dramatically increase electricity demand while protecting ratepayers and maintaining reliability. So this means that utilities have to update their planning under Washington's Clean Energy Transformation Act, which requires 100% clean electricity by 2045. So utilities do have to plan for a rapidly growing electricity demand and address major energy users like data centers, AI, and cloud infrastructures, and ensure that there's not this shifting of costs on ratepayers, and that our grid is strengthened for long-term infrastructure. Now, one thing I did want to mention is that House Bill, this deals with supply. This particular bill is about utilities, right? But House Bill 2515 did not pass. And that is all about addressing the rapid growth of data centers and putting more of the responsibility on data centers, which is the demand. So this House Bill 2515, well, let's just say data centers really have great lobbyists, really great paid lobbyists and corporations behind it for it to fail. So I think this one we will need to work on in the interim. I just wanted to show that for the most part, we did defend Climate Commitment Act. That was sustained and maintained in the ballot box. Thank you so much, with Initiative 2017 rejecting that. And there's also some funding for the wildfire and forest restoration, may not be to the full, but it was restored. The Climate Commitment Act was not used for working families tax credit. Instead, it was used for bonding for salmon habitat and some other water funds. But we do need to still address data centers. That is probably the missed opportunity this year, is addressing that particular industry. And I just wanted to say that it has been a historic year, and we've begun to address some of the challenges, the modern challenges that we face, everything from environment to data centers to our aggressive tax system. And, we're on our way, free school meals, protecting and advancing immigration rights, preserving our healthcare. So I just wanted to thank you all for being in the fight. If you have any questions or if you have any comments, love to hear it, because we're only going forward. And I'll stop sharing.
I have a question for you. Is it possible to get a copy of this so that we can take it to our own faith community and show it to them? I think it's very good the way it was laid out so well.
Yes. I'll just probably remove a couple things that maybe if you were talking about 2025, just to focus on 2026.
Yes. Okay. And how would we get that then?
If you could.
I'll send a recap email post this meeting, and so hopefully even by the end of the week, early next week, we can get that to you once Kristen's made her edits.
That would be great.
Yeah, I'll make it simpler and edited, so you also have a transcript to talk about it, right?
Right.
As well as a couple of other things I might add there, since I'm narrating for you and can answer questions. But to put more details, I could add a transcript and the presentation.
Yeah, because I think that it would be very good to take it to our own communities. Thank you.
Jeff, I saw you in first.
Oh,
Sorry.
Yeah, I just want, Kristen, who was leading the House data center bill? Who was legislator Bill was prime on that
Rep.
one?
Dolio, the chair of environment.
Okay, thank you.
I think it really was an onslaught of lobbyists and big guns for data centers and AI. And I think that is a field that faith communities and people of conscience really need to be at, about the type of values that are going into AI and its uses. Because right now there are those in the administration that talked about use of AI and weaponizing it for the Department of War. And that's how we ended up with bombing, a girls' school in Iran.
Yeah. I'm just very concerned that we're setting up a situation where we have to choose between AI and salmon, and I think I'd rather prefer salmon rather than AI.
Yeah, I mean, the first part was past the supply side, the utilities, but it's
Right.
supposed to work together and putting some responsibility and accountability and transparency on those who use the most energy and make sure that, they know what their impacts are to the environment or that we know. And also that if they should leave, what is the cost to the taxpayer? Like, sometimes there's a data center and then they remove it, but then there's always a cost back to the utility, and then that's shifted onto the taxpayer. That happened to Tacoma with regards to
Yeah.
one of these mills, and that actually increased the rates. But
Yeah.
we are probably witnessing some increased rates right now in Washington and all throughout the country.
Or I think my perspective is more of a situation that, the lower Snake River dams would never have been built if we'd actually would have engaged the tribes in that particular endeavor, and that the data centers are just a way of extending that, exploitation of resources in the future. And to me, I think we're in a situation right now where, we have a choice. We can either take the ability to build new electricity generation and use it to remove the dams and address that past harm, or we have the choice to continue with business as usual, where we have corporations which look to maximize their profit and not, deal with the responsibility that they have to address past harms. And to me, I think that's something that we really need to focus on, because I think that's a moral decision.
Are you
And
part of our environmental work group, Jeff? Because that's something we can work on, as well
I
as
would
taking a
love
look
to
at.
I would love to support this, because I think this is, if you put the choice in front of people to say, would you rather have, a healthy salmon environment along the Columbia River, or would you rather have, a bunch of AI data centers which bring very few jobs into the state, put a lot of money into corporate pockets? I think you know what the answer would be.
I
Thanks, Jeff.
do. So it's something
We
to work
definitely,
on. And
thanks,
also there
Jeff.
was a
We
data center study. So I don't know if you know that. They just released recently,
Yeah.
but ongoing, I'm sure they'd have to update it. And Laura?
Thank you, Jeff. We definitely appreciate your comments, but yes, we invite you to our working group. I think we'll have more of that information towards the end in the next few moments. And yeah, let's send it over to Laura. You had a question as well?
Well, I'd like to ask for Kristen, if you could summarize what we ended up with in 5982, I would really appreciate that. That's been a big interest here for
Okay.
us. I mean, I think I got what you said, but I've been trying to figure this out and how it differs from the other one and all that. And
Well, I like to think about it as supply and demand. The utilities have to plan, right? Utilities are planning for the clean energy transformation, and they have to think about these data centers, what's going on with them. But then the data center bill, the data center themselves have a responsibility to report, be transparent, and to study themselves and to tell and to inform. And there would be some extra responsibilities and fees that they would have to do. So there's that two sides. That's
yeah.
the difference. One is the utilities and one is the data centers.
Well, yeah, and I attended the 16th Legislative District Town Hall meeting, and there was discussion about that. First of all, the Republicans are didn't even seem to be there any concern about water and power there. It was just having seen it go in other places as far as being really good for communities. So that was the opposition to the bill. So they, for whatever reason, that didn't seem to be a concern. But my representative did agree. It seemed like he agreed with the idea that there should not be an exemption. And so I understand that this bill does eliminate the exemption for one time, like an Amazon data center or something like that. They did get rid of that exemption.
Yeah, they did get rid of the tax exemption, so they do have to pay taxes on certain things. And, for a long time, Washington State had clean and abundant energy, hydro energy, right? And so a lot of data centers, a lot of people came over here and put them in central Washington because of all the clean. But now we're experiencing such a demand, there's not as much supply as we thought. We're coming to a point where people are using up a lot of energy, and these data centers just keep on growing, and their needs are unsatiable.
Michael Lynn,
Okay.
did you have a question as well? Sorry, Laura.
I just want to speak to my personal experience with the housing issue. When my husband died of cancer 40 years ago, leaving me with a 10-month-old baby and a 4-year-old daughter, my landlady contacted me right away, and she said, look, our company has 12 low-income houses available out here in what was really the boondocks at that time. And she really worked hard to get me one of those houses. I didn't make up my mind immediately, and by the time I got back to make the phone call to somebody who could advise, somebody in my family who could advise me, all the houses were taken. She fought to get me number one on the waiting list in case one of the other families dropped out, and one of their families did drop out, and that's how I got my house. This was under the old farm home program years and years ago, of farm home housing. And so since then, today my house is free and clear, and but it's now assessed at $330,000. So when I die, I'm 84, so that might be not very far away. Only a millionaire will be able to afford this, what was once low-income housing. This is so not right. There's 3 new developments under construction right now in my neighborhood, and they're all going for, $500,000 and up. So where is the option for anybody to have affordable housing? Not just the poor, but anybody. So I'm glad that you're making it a priority to continue working on this issue. To me, it's number one.
Well, thank you. Yes, I think the state legislature understands that, and that's why they are looking at the permitting system. They're looking at any and all type of housing that they could put together, funding, et cetera, on ways to make it easier for people to build housing and for people to be housed, period. Because you're right, it is not just those on the streets. There are many people who work so many jobs and still can't afford housing. So we'll keep on going on that, definitely. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for your passionate responses, and this is why we love our fan community. We have a couple more things. We might have, Blake, do we have time for, well, actually, let me do this. Are there any legislative district leads in the room with us? Can you put up an emoji or wave your hand? Hi, Jeff. Anyone else here? We want to celebrate you. We want to thank you for doing that work. So thank you, Jeff, and thank you for anyone else we might have missed for volunteering and for helping us lead this effort. We could not do this work without you. So thank you. We have maybe a couple minutes of reflection time, Blake, and then we'll hand that over to Jess. Thanks.
Great. And I think I'm starting us off on the reflection piece. So just really appreciate everyone's full presence tonight and your energy and sharing from your life experience. And as we've had time to listen and celebrate some of the budget wins, we know at FAN that we see advocacy as a spiritual practice. So we do want to have a moment to pause and reflect together. So I'm going to invite Blake we're going to attempt to share some little quiet music in the background, but we're going to just shift gears for a moment here. And I want you to think back on this legislative session. Kristen highlighted some of the key bills that many of us were following. You might think about your time at Interfaith Advocacy Day, or ways that you engaged your faith community throughout the short session. But I invite you just for the next minute or so to think about, was there a moment in this legislative session that felt sacred to you? And I invite you to share that in the chat if you feel open to doing that. And we also invite people to unmute if you would like as well. Thanks, Blake. So I'll put the question in the chat. You can just take it as personal reflection, or you can share with the group.
All right, I'm gonna turn the music down just a little bit and invite you back in. Thanks for engaging. So as you think about these questions, we want to invite a time of open sharing. And we just want to encourage you. Some of you have shared in the chat, and I'm just going to read those out loud. And then for those who might want to share verbally a sentence or two, we welcome that as well. So in the chat, Joyce said, the joy of marching and gathering on the steps together felt sacred to me. Me too. Me too. Thanks, Joyce. Jeff said, HB 2296 removed balcony solar in the end, even though its persuasive special interest killed it. That may have been a comment to something earlier, but definitely talked about some of the reflection work needed. These are real things too. I said one of my students led a walkout at his school. This network gave me the courage to encourage him in such a way. Thank you. Laura said, seeing unanimous support for 2238 on food security. Awesome. That's wonderful. And Jeff said, listening to my neighbors at the LD7 town hall felt sacred and challenging to me. I'll read just a couple more, and then I want to make sure we have time for verbal responses too as we close. Jeff said, breaking bread, eating sandwiches together always seems so sacred. Yes, I love that part of IFAD too. Thanks, Jeff. And then, yeah, I want to just, if anybody has like a sentence or two they may not put in the chat but want to contribute verbally, I'll call upon you if you raise your hand. Yeah, go ahead.
I'll just read what I typed here. I'm at 84. I'm no longer physically able to attend at IFAD Day. So I felt it as a sacred duty to sign in pro every single time you ask me.
Thank you.
I was going to say, I love you because we always have to put that together. I'm like, who's doing these things? So thank you so much.
Okay. Anyone else? One last chance. Yeah, Laura, go ahead.
Oh, I just wanted to tell Kristen that I relate to what you're saying because we were asking people to sign up at our church, and I wasn't sure they were, so I was going around during coffee time and asking people to do it right then and there, and they said, already did, and I was so yeah, big change this year, I think.
Thank you so much, everyone. It is just sacred to hear all of these moments and to have this time together and just to kind of embrace the communal nature of this advocacy that we have together and our humanness and everything in between. We, as Kristen mentioned, there's still more work to do on a lot of these policies that we have been working on. So I'm going to share just a few other ways that we can together continue engaging even though the legislative session is over. So it'll just take me a moment here to start the slideshow. Is everyone able to see this? Okay. So for those who expressed passion around some of these bills and areas, if you haven't yet had a chance to connect or learn about these issue area working groups, we have Bree is leading a group that is focusing on housing and homelessness. That's a virtual meeting. If you're interested in joining, there is a link to the form, and maybe Blake will put it in the chat for me. There's also our criminal justice reform and policy accountability group meeting on the fourth Wednesday of the month at 3. Just today, we have an economic justice group that Steve Claggett is leading. Elizabeth is getting our environmental justice working group going. So Jeff, I'm excited if you've got energy around the data centers around that. And then also our INIC, Interfaith Network for Indigenous Communities, is another entry point. And I didn't want to let this gathering go by without just highlighting again, we continue our policy work for immigrant and refugee rights, but one of our core partners, Washington Immigrant Solidarity Network, is who we look to around how do we continue to accompany our immigrant and refugee neighbors. And so in January 2026, they shared this hotspot report of where detentions are occurring across Washington, especially in the cities of Seattle and Bellingham. And so maybe it's not you, but someone you know who might be interested in being trained in rapid response. There are 2 trainings coming up over Zoom. And also just a reminder to put the Deportation Defense Hotline on your phone. That more information that the Wyzen can gather, we can inform community. And we'll put some links in the chat for if you want to sign up for those rapid response trainings. And I just wanted to name too that, especially in terms of deportation defense, like so much is happening in local hubs. So if you are interested, if you aren't already connected and want to connect somewhere where you live, please reach out to me and I will help do that. But we've got Yakima Immigrant Response Network, Tri-Cities Immigrant Coalition. I see Gretchen on here. Church Council of Greater Seattle, JCIJ, Wenatchee for Immigrant Justice, also Spokane Immigrant Rights Coalition. And we know there are many more. This is not all of them, but just we're especially encouraging people to connect at that local level to continue this ongoing work. One unique collaboration that we're doing in the Seattle area around immigrant solidarity is a convening that will be happening tomorrow night to hear from clergy who went to Minneapolis. And so that registration closes tonight at 8 p.m. It's an in-person event only, but that link we'll share in the chat as well if you would like to come to that in-person event for folks in the King County area. Also want to highlight No Kings this Saturday. Maybe raise your hand or give an emoji if you're planning on going or, just holding it in prayer. Kristen will be at Tacoma. Blake, join a multi-faith delegation at Central Lutheran Church if you're in the Seattle area. See me at Memorial Park in Wenatchee. Bree will be at VA Clark Park in Spokane. And if you're trying to organize another group in a different location and want help reaching out to other fan folks, please let us know. For those near Tacoma, we also want to highlight the Pierce County Homeless Memorial happening this Sunday. For those in the Spokane area, on Good Friday, there will be a Way of the Cross. And then we'll also be at the table turning at the Northwest Detention Center in Tacoma on Saturday, April 4th. All of these things are, in our e-news, but we wanted to lift them up in a special way since there are just so many things happening and we hope to connect with you in those spaces. Joyce, I will turn it to you.
Yes. Well, we wanted to end with a closing prayer or a statement of gratitude, how you'd like to enter. So please join me as we close. We celebrate and give thanks for the passing of SB 6346, the Millionaire's Tax. We celebrate for the passing of all the bills that benefit and will help particularly the low-income residents of Washington State. We continue to pray for the protection of the budgets earmarked for low-income families and housing investments, Apple Healthcare expansion, and immigration and refugee support. We pray for the protection of immigrants and other people of color targeted by ICE agents. We pray for the conditions of the detainees that they are facing in the Northwest Detention Center. We pray for our earth, and we pray for the environment, and we pray for peace around the world. We pray for those of us who identify as people of faith and conscious that we continue to work together in love and solidarity for the benefit of all the residents in Washington State. In your many names, we say amen. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. We celebrate with you. Without you, this work is done in solidarity and community. So we're so glad that you were able to join us to celebrate together. And we look forward to seeing you at all of the things that just listed. We will post those in the e-news. Please sign up for our newsletter if you're not already on there so we can continue to work alongside each other. Have a great evening, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Everyone, so good to be with you tonight.